a man, who they say he murdered 3. Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. Coffee does come out as a ghost. Yes, there is such a thing. Ghost coffee. Pick up any well seasoned coffee cup, the kind that never gets washed, and sniff the interior. That is ghost coffee. And not a good form of caffeine, though. If you want real, live coffee, you have to go buy the Organic Man coffee trike and experience the best coffee in the universe. 4501 McPherson is where it's at. If you can't get there from there, go to organicmancoffeetrike.shop. Find out what real living coffee tastes like. I have to thank a channel called Marked Terror for sparking my interest in this weird goings on in Zion National Park. It led to me doing a bunch of reading and eventually making this show. Marked Terror is a channel that relies heavily on AI to do their show. Some of the images are just plain weird and pretty bad, ridiculous looking, but the information is good. The voice is also AI, but at least you can listen to him. The speaker is telling about a park ranger who had an encounter back in the 1930s, and he calls it in on his radio, which park rangers didn't have radios back then. They didn't get two-way radios until about the 1940s. The radio looks like an old AM/FM radio I used to have. If you ignore the images and pay attention to the audio, it's pretty good. What is getting scary is how good AI is getting at impersonating us humans. Eventually, we won't be able to tell the difference. Zion National Park is not just a place of natural beauty, but it also has some interesting legends and stories. The legends involve both Indian tribes and early Mormon settlers who found sanctuary and sometimes mysteries while in and around the area. The local tribes, particularly the Southern Paiute and the Pueblo before them, have long held Zion and the area around it as being sacred land. To them, this was a place imbued with spiritual significance, home to powerful spirits, and a gateway to other realms, like giant portals to other dimensions. The legend of Zion is woven into the fabric of many tribes, creating a very deep connection to their past and to history. The name Zion itself was given by the early Mormon settlers who reflected a sense of divine providence and a feeling of sanctuary when they arrived. These settlers saw the towering walls of Zion Canyon not just as a geological marvel, but as a temple to God. To them, Zion was a place where you could commune with the divine, away from the normal hassles of everyday life. There were hassles back in the 1800s, just not like what we have today. The original name of Zion National Park was Mukuntawiap. Mukuntuwiap. An Indian name. Mukkentuweap. I have a hard enough time with English without trying that. The settlers believed that the grandeur and majesty of the canyons were a testament to God and his creations. The Indians saw it as a place the spirits lived. One enduring legend of Zion National Park centers around one of their most iconic rock formations, the Great White Throne. This massive monolith of white Navajo sandstone stands 2,000 feet above the canyon. It is said to be where God sits. He judges the worthiness of those who pass through the valley below. Below. Hmm. The legends speak to the awe and reverence that the early settlers felt for the landscape, seeing in it its grandeur and reflections of the divine. The Paiute shunned Zion Canyon as a place of mysterious and spooky happenings, not a good place to be once the sun went down. It was sacred ground, not to be trifled with. They didn't enter the area, they only viewed it from the edges. Zion National Park has a history of mysterious disappearances that have left many questions unanswered. One of the most intriguing mysteries is the sudden disappearance of the Anasazi, who used to live in the area. The reason behind their sudden exodus remain a topic of speculation and research with historians and archaeologists. I couldn't find the time or the date of this story, but one man, I'll call him Jim, was walking along the well used trail with some friends. He said he wanted to get a photo from just off the side of the trail a bit, and he stepped into the brush. After several minutes, his friends got to wondering why Jim was taking so long. They went to look, and they found nothing. Jim had vanished. Park rangers arrived and began searching the area, but they never found him. Nothing. Not his day bag, his camera, no items, no footprints. The spot he had vanished from was not a cliff. It wasn't a drop off at all. It was just a gradual edge that ran down into a small valley, but the visibility was really good. There was no river or place to hide his body, yet it has never been found. I did find several references to this story. The trouble is, they gave varying dates, about 25 years apart, and they gave varying locations, but they all agreed that Jim had disappeared from an area where you just don't disappear from. June 27th, 1927, William Evans decided he was going to climb the Great White Throne, equipped with a length of rope, a canteen of water, and a few essential snacks. After successfully scaling the southern saddle of the throne, he decided to spend the night up there. If you've never spent the night in the desert staring up at the stars, you don't know what you're missing. I used to spend many hours out at NTC, Fort Irwin, out in California, standing out in the desert just staring up at all the stars. It was amazing. Too bad I had guard duty all night. I did a lot of stargazing instead of guarding, I guess. Anyway, Evans decided he was going to come back down that next day, but he never showed back up at camp. After several hours of everybody wondering what had happened to him, they began to scour the terrain trying to find him. Several days went by before they found him entangled in a manzanita brush. He was on the brink of death. He had gone 3 days without food or water, hanging from this bush in the summer heat, waiting for someone to come find him, even if it was just the Grim Reaper. He had little recollection of what had happened. He said he had slid down the side of the cliff. It was a gradual incline, and that was it. He doesn't remember anything after that. Once winding up in that bush, all he could do is sit there and wait. His climb made headlines throughout the nation, and the Zion Park Services prohibited anybody from doing any rock climbing after that. It wasn't until 1967 that people were once again permitted to climb the cliffs. In January 1930, air crashes were relatively uncommon, seeing as air travel was somewhat of an oddity. A Western Air Service Boeing 95 mail plane vanished in a snowstorm. Captain Maurice Francis Graham, a World War I flying legend, who had received both the Distinguished Flying Cross and the French Legion of Honor, was flying the plane. He was regarded as one of the best pilots around. He was flying an airmail route from Los Angeles to Salt Lake City. He was sighted flying over Cedar City, Utah, and then never heard from again. A joint effort by the U.S. Postal Service and the Iron County residents, the Army Air Corps, was launched in order to try and find his plane. These efforts proved unsuccessful. Late that spring, Graham's plane was discovered by residents in Parowan. Remarkably, Graham had managed to safely land at night during a snowstorm atop a 9,500-foot mountain, relying solely on what few navigational aids he had in the cockpit and his own abilities. Somehow he put the plane down in the dark on a mountain without getting killed. The mail bin was still sealed. The fuel was still in the tanks. Had it not been such a nasty night, he probably could have continued on, but, well, they did find messages at the plane that said that Graham was going to head east on foot. Graham's remains were later found in July by his friends in Spanish Hollow, which was Crystal Creek Canyon, with the security mailbag still in his arms. His last log entry read, "Arrived 2:35 a.m., no destination in mind." Today there is a memorial at Kanara Mountain near where Graham had landed. It's slightly north of Zion National Park. September 1951, 17-year-old Elaine Kelton Cottrell, a kitchen helper, call them busboys today, suffered a fatal injury after falling off a cliff at the Zion National Park Resort. Lane and two friends were hiking near the Great White Throne when Lane left the trail, informing his friends he would descend at a more leisurely pace. While descending alone, it appears Cottrell fell, or maybe he was pushed, off the cliff. When Cottrell didn't return to the lodge that night, park rangers were notified and a search commenced. They reported seeing lights in the area where Cottrell had fallen, leading to the belief that perhaps he was trying to signal for help. Trouble was, Cottrell didn't have any form of light. The Watchman is located immediately east of Springdale, towering 2,600 feet above the town and the floor of the Zion Canyon. A Zion Park headquarters, the park's south entrance, and Watchman Campground are situated immediately north of the mountain, which makes it one of the most photographed parts of the park. The Watchman is wedged between the north and east forks of the Virgin River, which drains precipitation off of the mountains. Its neighbors include Mount Kennesaw, which is across the canyon to the west, Mount Bridge, which is to the north northeast, and the West Temple, which is to the northwest. This feature name was officially adopted in 1934 by the U.S. Board of Geographical Names. I didn't know there was such an entity. It is believed to have been named because it stands as a watchman guarding the south entrance of the park. That's the official story, anyway. If you ask any of the park officials or the park folks, that's what they're going to tell you. Those who live in the area will tell a different story. The watchman is a figure seen just after sundown sitting on a horse watching the valley below. Those who have seen the watchman say it's quite distinct, but you can't focus on the face. A figure on horseback watching for unknown reasons. Most say he looks like a cowboy, wide brimmed hat and all. If you ignore him, glancing up occasionally, he will be there for some time. If you stare directly at him, he fades from view. There are also ghost cowboys seen riding by the base of the formation. Sometime in the 1880s, ranch hands began reporting a group of three men on horseback galloping through the canyon. What drew attention to these men was they didn't make a sound. They also passed by without acknowledging any of the witnesses. As the riders got close enough, the witnesses could see they didn't have faces, only a blank, flat area where the face should have been. Once the three riders had passed, there were no hoof prints anywhere near where they had been. A park ranger working in the park in the 1930s encountered two men on horseback that were following him along the trail. When he turned to ask them some questions, he noticed their faces were simply white voids. The ranger filed an official report, which is still in their archives today. 1952, a photographer was able to catch an image of what looks like three men on horseback standing on the far bank of the river. If you look closely, you can see things behind them right through these three figures. 1872. Lawmen had been chasing a band of cattle rustlers who rode into the canyon. A flash flood caught the men unprepared, and their bodies were never found. These could be the lawmen still moving around the river, still doing their jobs. Over the years, many people have seen these three ghosts. There's always three of them. They're always silent. The most common time to see them is if there is a storm passing by the park, but not actually in it. Even park officials have told of running into the three watchmen only after they've either retired or moved on to other jobs. This gets me to wondering, is the rock formation named for these three missing men? Is the lone rider seen at the base of the monolith every night? Is he one of them or is he somebody else? Folks who camp along the edge of the Virgin River have awoke to the sound of hooves on stone tromping past their campsite. They look all around, but they see nothing. The sound can be tracked as they move along the river. Hooves on stone, even when moving over sand. Some campers have found hoof prints all around their tents in the morning. There hadn't been a sound during the night. Anyone following these tracks would have come to an area where they simply vanish. Horses don't usually fly, so where could they have gone? Back in the 1930s, a weird creature was seen in the park. Ranchers told of finding huge human looking footprints. Then things would go missing. Food would be taken from storage buildings or the backs of wagons. Tools would vanish, sometimes other items. In 1936, a prospector got too close to this thing. In the middle of the night, he awoke to the sound of someone moving about his camp. Stepping outside, the prospector saw a tall, thin creature covered in hair with eyes that glowed orange. The creature took off faster than any animal, and it scampered up the face of a cliff. This section of the park was closed to the public to protect artifacts of some kind. The folks around the area call this creature the Wild Man, but they don't know for sure if he's human or not. Park officials did find a cave filled with old animal bones and some of the items that had been reported missing over the years. Old tools and packaging from different food items like cans and such. The bones looked as if a human of some kind had been gnawing on them. The teeth marks were not of any animal. They looked almost human. The wild man or his descendants are still being spotted from time to time in the park, usually just around sunset. I found this story and thought about leaving it out, but the name of the show is Strange Things, not Normal Things. So here it is. Hurricane, Utah is just south of Zion. A couple, I'll call them Dave and Edith, just because Dave and Edith were staying at a hotel in town. They would drive into the park in the morning and then back to town at night. They would come and go through the main entrance, which was also the biggest. Instead of driving through the park, they would leave their car at the entrance and then take a shuttle bus to visit the different locations. Well, it turned out they weren't the only ones wanting to do this. There was a 2-hour wait for each bus. Instead of leaving, the couple went to shop and look around at some of the local sites. After buying a few items, they walked back to their car so they didn't have to carry any of these things around with them. They saw strange fingerprints were deliberately all over the car. They were easy to spot because the rental was black and the fingerprints were in yellow mud. They seemed to be carefully printed with a powdery soil from the ground in the parking lot. This was not the dust from driving, but mud formed by or adding water to dry soil. I'm not going to say what kind of water, but it just might have been urine. The prints were smeared all over the car. Large fingerprints and thumbprints with dermal swirls and deep dermal channels dotted the doors around the handles, the side mirrors, and even on the roof, the windows, all over the car. The prints on top of the door frame were pointed downwards towards the ground. You would need to have been laying on the roof of the car or reaching over from the other side in order to make those prints. Most of the handprints were on the passenger side of the car. Well, Dave and Edith just stared at the handprints, wondering what the heck is going on. It didn't look like someone was trying to break in, but maybe mess with them. There were swirls and shapes down on the windows of the car. Looking closely, they could see outlines of hair in the dried mud. Whoever did this had lots of hair on their hands and fingers. The only creature Edith could think of was a Bigfoot, and Bigfoot don't carry water bottles, if you know what I mean. The creature had to have been tall enough to reach over the roof of the car. The sudden urge to scrub the handprints off came over her, and she did, using her water bottle. She thought that if people suspected there was a Bigfoot in the area, either they would be scared and run away, or they'd want to go hunting, and she didn't think that was right. Later that evening, Edith said that she got to feeling kind of bad about washing the prints off, thinking that maybe this was some kind of a greeting or a gift or some kind of a message from the Bigfoot world. She did a silent prayer, saying she was sorry. The next morning, the fingerprints were back, dotting the car in the same places, kind of the same symbols as the day before. Dave and Edith drove back to the park the next morning, this time leaving the handprints in place. Instead of taking a bus, they simply parked and took off along one of the trails. If there was a Bigfoot in the area, they both wanted to see him or her. They were doing the Patterson Gimlin thing. They came to an open space with a lot of tree debris on the ground, sticks and limbs. Edith thought this was a good place to try her hand at making a stick glyph. You see them on TV all the time. Is this a good idea? I don't know. Some will say you should leave only footprints and take only photos. Others want to commune with nature by any means possible. They put together rock cairns, or they leave small trinkets like marbles or coins. I have no real opinion of this. Now, spray paint, now that's absolutely wrong. Knocking over any rock should be corporal punishment. Carving your name into a rock only lets folks know who's an idiot. Edith wanted to leave something for the Bigfoot, so she did. She used the sun-bleached sticks and fashioned a modest but artistic stack in a sort of a geometric design. They continued walking along the trail when Dave spotted poo, dookie, gat, last night's dinner. It was a pile monumental proportions, like maybe an elephant had just dropped a deuce or something. Now, I'm no expert, but I can tell the difference between human and most animal droppings. The pile looked human to Dave. He got a stick and he poked at it, just a bit, to see what might pop up. If you see hair in the poo, it means there was a predator. If, on the other hand, you see nothing but seeds and things like that, it's more than likely just a herbivore. Except keep in mind, bears eat both. Wombat droppings are square. Yes, they're little cubes, and that's gotta hurt. When a wombat eats food, it takes forever to pass through its intestines, which are 8 times as long as it is. The last few feet of the intestines squeeze every last drop of nutrition out of the poop, and it comes out squared. I find it fascinating that A, wombats poop squares, and B, the scientists study their poop. Look it up if you think I'm telling tales. Just look for wombat poo. Once back at their hotel, Dave got busy looking at poop on the internet and trying to see if maybe what they had found could be explained away. Bears don't seem to like Zion. There have been no bear reports in the park forever. There are no deer that would have made a pile like what they found. Deer poop looks like raisins, just a bit, like rabbit poop. After spending way too much time looking at number two, Dave decided he must have found a Bigfoot deposit. It doesn't say whether he took any photos or not, and I don't know if they took any of the prints on the car. The next morning, they were going to drive to Las Vegas, hopefully to not lose their life savings at the roulette table. The secret to not losing at gambling is don't gamble. Dave and Edith left their hotel room at around midnight and drove southwest into the desert. After a few miles, they stopped and they walked out into the sand to do some stargazing. Like I said, if you've never seen the stars at night out in the desert, you don't know what you're missing. As they sat there in the still night, a grinding sound came from the darkness, almost like a motor trying to start or somebody opening a door that needed a lot of oil. I've heard this before. A weird metallic banging or grinding sound in a location where there shouldn't be such a sound. Some believe that this might be a portal opening or closing. The sound seemed to be moving towards them, but it was up in the sky. It passed right over their heads, but they couldn't see anything. It was all too much, so they quickly walked back to their car and continued their journey. I've talked to a lot of Bigfoot hunters who think UFOs and ghosts are all just a bunch of nonsense. I've talked to ghost investigators who think Bigfoot is some guy in a costume and UFOs are only seen by drunks. I've had UFO enthusiasts say that Bigfoot hunters need a new hobby and ghosts are all a bunch of demons. I've also talked to a lot of folks who have actually witnessed UFOs, Bigfoot, and ghosts, and they've all told me that they've seen 2 or 3 different types of these mysteries. The best answer to all of this is we don't really know anything about these sightings and encounters. We should keep looking into them, but we don't really know what's going on. It is a mystery. July 1947, right around the same time as the Roswell incident, a park ranger reported seeing 3 whitish blue objects in the sky. These lights were right above the watchman, just hovering there for a few minutes before shooting straight up and vanishing. Had the ranger been the only witness, it might have been just his imagination. However, there were 15 tourists there with him at the time, and they all saw the same thing. Pilots from Hill Air Force Base told of their radar going bonkers or seeing things flying in the sky, moving well beyond anything that we had at the time in and around the Zion Park area. 1972, Geology students working in the park at the base of Angel's Landing captured photographs of a sphere of light near the cliff face. It was as close to a perfect circle as you could get. The image was examined by NASA, and they said it was not lens flare or any kind of artifact from the film or the camera. They didn't know what it might be, but it wasn't any kind of anomaly like that. Unfortunately, the negatives vanished from the file and sometime in the 1980s. Sightings became so commonplace it was SOP, standard operating procedure, that any sightings were written down on the log, but they were not reported over the airwaves. On several occasions, visitors to the park have reported missing time. They suddenly realize that anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour cannot be accounted for. 2018, a bunch of skywatchers set up to photograph the Milky Way. They had several cameras so they could catch the sky from several angles without having to move their equipment. Their cameras caught a pulsing blue light in the canyon. They were using still photography, taking dozens of images, one after another. The blue light seemed to bend around rocks, illuminating shadowy places where it shouldn't have been able to reach. The photographers analyzed these images, coming up with more questions than answers. What do you do when you have a situation like this? You go back and you try again. A month later, they set up in the exact same spot using the same gear. Just after they had everything ready, the cameras began to malfunction one after another. Eventually, every camera they had brought was dead. All the memory cards were completely blank. Nothing showed up on any of them. Visitor to Zion, Bill, not his real name, on vacation shot some photos of the scenery. When the film was developed, there was a craft on one of the images. Bill looked at it under magnification. The craft looked like a triangle with lights all around the edges. None of the experts could debunk the image, so they all try to simply ignore it. While on a road trip through Arizona and Utah on Labor Day weekend 2004, Carl and his son were visiting several national parks. They stopped for a brief visit at Zion near Cedar City. Carl took 27 photographs while in the park. Image number 22 was the only one with anything unusual. For some odd reason, all the other film, there was nothing on them, just that one. A my cat keeps sticking his head between me and my notes. A professional pilot presented a UFO sighting report to MUFON, the UFO network, which contained a clear video showing a white-colored cigar-shaped object flying over Zion National Park. The UFO the UFO flew in close formation underneath the plane. The video was recorded while flying at 40,000 feet above the national park. September 2019, and it was presented to MUFON as evidence of a UFO sighting. The pilot said, after noticing a mysterious cigar-shaped object flying parallel to my plane, I recorded a piece of video taken from the cockpit. The plane is located at 40,000 feet and concerns an object that flies at a lower altitude above the ground. I'm not sure what it is, but it was not a drone or other aircraft. It was too big to be a drone. One hiker, I'll call him Tim, did you know that while filming Monty Python's Holy Grail, John Cleese said he couldn't remember the really long, impressive name he was supposed to use, so he simply went with Tim. There are those who call me Tim. Tim encountered a group of individuals twice during a single hike, leading to a wave of theories about time glitches or parallel reality. Sometime around 2022, while hiking the Narrows, Tim noticed a man in a Moana t shirt walking with two women. Initially, the hiker felt reassured by their size and pace, believing if they could manage the hike, so could he. It is kind of humorous on occasion and sometimes worrisome how you'll see folks out attempting a hard hike dressed in all the wrong gear and not carrying enough water. Well, if they could make it, Tim figured he should not have any problems. They passed him going up the trail. Tim walked as far as he felt necessary, and then he turned back for his car. As he was walking into the parking lot, he spotted the same trio now walking across the lot towards him. There was just the one trail with no way of going other than the trail. And no one, especially in a Moana t shirt, had passed him as he was coming back down the trail or entering the parking lot. Yet, there they were, walking in front of him. The witness just said, "Hey, how did y'all get here so quick?" thinking they would have a ready answer. Instead, the three acted as if he wasn't there, simply kept walking right by him, never even glancing his direction. His words just hung in the air. A mother and daughter duo began their trek one day. I'm going to call them Paula and Pam. A few of you will get that reference. They were hoping for just a short outing. As they walked, Paula noticed a bit of a change in the surroundings. The trail looked less used, as if nobody had been along it in years. The rocks and the brush began to look a bit odd. Paula felt uneasy due to this unfamiliar look. Just moments into the hike, they saw a couple on the same trail who simply vanished from sight. Pam thought the couple had simply stepped off the trail, but there was no place to step to. After taking a break for lunch and enjoying the view, Paula and Pam pressed on only to run into that same couple once more. There they were on the trail up ahead, and then they were gone again. Pam asked her mother if just maybe she was seeing things, only to have Paula tell her she'd seen the same thing twice. Things were just too weird, so they headed back to their car. As they got closer to the parking area, the rocks and the brush began to look normal once more, and no more strange activity occurred. February 2021, 42-year-old Corbin McMillan was found deceased at the base of Moonlit Buttress on the West Rim Trail near Angel's Landing. He had informed his mother that he had planned to hike Angel's Landing Trail. Park officials found his vehicle at Grotto Trailhead, and then later they found him. His body was at the base of the Angel's Landing, which is possibly one of the most dangerous hiking trails in the United States. It's a 1,000-foot drop off on both sides of the trail. They have mounted chains that are bolted into the rock so you'll have something to hang on to. The trail falls away on both sides. To keep people from experiencing deceleration poisoning, the park has installed a set of chains that run from one end of the trail to the other that you get to hang on to as you walk. In some places, the trail is only 30 inches across. The exact number of folks who have met their maker from falling off of this trail is not really known. Some say it's 18, some say it's 22. Others say it's a lot more than that. The park doesn't like to keep track of these things. It's bad for business. The folks who have taken this hike and lived to tell about it say the wind wasn't whistling like it should, but it sounded like it was humming. They sometimes would feel a strange sensation, like the pressurization you get when you go up in an airplane. Gusts of wind can get up to 50 miles an hour and then suddenly stop. If you've ever leaned into a strong wind only to have it stop blowing, you'll know what that sensation feels like. A few people have said that they felt someone put a hand on their shoulder as if to steady them, only to look around and find there's nobody there. One hiker was recording their hike. On the recording, you can hear a female voice saying, "Don't let go." There was nobody close enough to be heard on the camera's mic. 2 weeks later, another hiker fell from the same spot. One hiker set their backpack on the trail with their cell phone propped up to film themselves. The video shows the hiker's shadow moving into position, and there's a second shadow in the frame. The other shadow looked out of focus and semi transparent. The hiker never got his hero shot. He fell before getting into position. August 2006, Washington County Sheriff's deputies investigated the death of a 29-year-old Bernadette Vandermeer, who fell the 1,000 feet from the Angel's Landing. Deputies reported that she fell from an overlook area while hiking with her husband. The case is notable for two reasons. Law enforcement investigating the death ruled out foul play and determined that it must have been an accident, even though they're not sure. Also, Bernadette's accident is one of several deadly falls in the park. Four similar deaths had been reported, all in 1983. It is ranked the 10th most dangerous national park, with so many deaths that all seem to be in that same area, that same little stretch of trail, that same trail that I am never, ever going to attempt. The Virgin River and surrounding areas of Utah experienced severe floods in the 60s. The peak discharge of the Virgin area was surpassed the highest amount recorded ever in the 30s. It was estimated to be at least 14 feet high at the crest of the flood. It's a 100-year floodplain that they have floods all the time. Alvin Bunyan Nelson and Frank Wilson Johnson, both 17, took a hike in the valley only to encounter a sudden flash flood. The bodies of these two boys were not found, even though the park officials searched everywhere. However, during their search, they found the bodies of three other people. A rescue party, including 200 volunteers, scoured the area around the Virgin River without any success. They could not find the two boys. As for the three bodies, they have no idea who they were. They remain unidentified even today. July 16, 1965, two park rangers discovered human remains near Cedar Breaks Cliffs, close to the Sunset View Lookout. Uh, the rangers found the body positioned between two logs in a doubled over position about 300 feet from the highway. Along with the body, the rangers found an empty wallet, an empty suitcase, a cane, $1.51 in change, and a flashlight. One of the Iron County Sheriff's deputies involved in recovering the remains estimated they had been there for about a year. At the time, no individuals were reported missing from the surrounding area, and there were no abandoned vehicles found anywhere. They have no idea who this person was, what he was doing, or how he died. October 1st, 1970, a Washington County road worker discovered the body of an unidentified female near St. George. The body was found about 5 feet from the county road heading to Gunlock, north of US 91. Initially, the woman's body was thought to be that of an Indian, a feather, not dot, but the teeth fillings suggested otherwise. Law enforcement initially considered the unidentified woman might have been a Catherine Shapiro who had gone missing from Santa Ana, California in November of '69. She was the only missing person report in the area for months. No clothing and no belongings were ever found to identify this woman, and her body is still unidentified. The district attorney of Washington County and the sheriff later stated that they had not ruled out foul play despite the case being decades old. There's no statute of limitation on murder, so if it was a murder, they're still looking into it. February 2nd, 1994, hikers discovered a human skull approximately 1,320 feet south of State Road 89, 2 miles west of Big Water, in a remote, rugged crevasse. Is it crevasse or crevice? Like, is it a vase or a vase? Some of y'all saw that commercial. Hmm. Uh, Initially, they thought that this was some kind of an archaeological discovery. Maybe some really old caveman or an Indian that had died in the area. Until they checked out the dental work, that's when they figured out, okay, the skeleton is not that old. They found a paper in the corpse's pants pocket originating from Flagstaff, Arizona, but they couldn't read any of the words on the paper. The body was wearing a red baseball cap, a plaid jacket, flannel shirt, blue denim pants, and tennis shoes. Authorities estimated the man had been dead 10 to 15 years. Examination of the skull reviewed two blows from a blunt object. The Kane County Sheriff believes the man was hitching for a ride from Flagstaff and was either killed along the way or he may have been murdered right there in Kane County. Now, I have to wonder if the skull had a red baseball cap on it, how in the heck would anybody think this was some kind of archaeological find? 2014, the remains of an unidentified male were found in North Creek, north of Virgin, Utah. Hikers discovered this skeleton's remains in a drainage wash following a heavy rain. Additional remains, included a pelvis, were subsequently found. Investigators initially determined the remains belonged to a white male between 35 and 45 years of age at the time of his death, estimating the remains had been in the location for 1 or 2 years before discovery. Details of the case were then entered into the NamUs system. That's a computer program where you try to identify dead bodies. I don't know if you want to look at it or not because some of the remains aren't all that good looking. Despite efforts to solve the case, the remains were unidentified until 2023 when the Utah Department of Public Safety submitted forensic evidence to Othram in the woodlands in Texas. Othram scientists managed to extract DNA from the man's remains. A comparison of this DNA to a woman, oh, who was who was his sister. I was going to say, wait, it's a man, it's a woman. The DNA from a woman who was his sister proved to be a match. The Utah Office of Medical Examiner confirmed the man's identity as Michael Lance Milliken from Texas, who had traveled from here to Las Vegas and then on to Hurricane, Utah. Milliken's remains were returned to his family. For those of you that have never found a dead body, and I don't mean somebody just passed away in the back room, I'm talking about somebody that's been there a while, they sometimes don't stay together. Scavengers might haul off a piece or two. If it rains, the water's going to wash parts around. Things get buried, things get lost. Dead bodies move around, and the older they get, the more they move. And sometimes the smell will let you know there's somebody dead there long before you even find anything. I can't tell how many dead bodies I've found over the years. A few. Never, never ever found out who any of them were. The legend of water babies is entrenched in Indian traditions that span across the diverse tribes of the western United States. These creatures mimic the cries of infant and young children. These cries are often reported to emanate from the depths of various bodies of water, ranging from still surfaces of lakes to flowing rivers. These eerie auditory experiences have not only been the subject of hushed whispers among the local communities, but have also been embedded in cultural narratives and oral history of the local folks. The cries often described as being so lifelike that they can unsettle even the strongest of person. The Paiute used to warn folks not to walk along the banks of the Virgin River after dark. Anyone doing so will hear children crying for help. They may even see hands reaching up from the water, grasping at anything or anyone stepping close enough. The legend of these encounters are based on, or the legend of these encounters are based on either children who accidentally drowned or maybe drowned on purpose due to birth defects. Or it could be kids that simply went missing because some spirit whisked them away. Mormon settlers in the 1800s heard these stories and they figured this was simply superstition until their kids began to go missing. From 1863 to 1875, too many young people went and vanished along the banks of the river. Oh, yeah, they might have slipped and fallen into the water, but where these incidences took place, the water wasn't that deep and the current wasn't that strong. You can fall in the water and simply stand up. It's only knee deep in some places. June 14th, 1956, hikers in the park began to hear the sound of a small child crying. This led them to follow the sounds until they came to a 12-inch depression in the rock. It was filled with water even though it hadn't rained in some time. The water was rippling as if somebody had dropped a stone right in the middle. The ripples simply continued long after they should have stopped. The sound seemed to be coming from around this puddle, if not from the puddle itself. What was that episode of Doctor Who? The Puddle of Water? Now, people also report hearing children laughing or giggling, only to suddenly stop, followed by absolute quiet. The kind of silence when something really bad is about to happen. People are still vanishing along the river. Park authorities say these folks drowned, but the locals say they've been taken. The woman in white of the Emerald Pools is a common enough sighting. It started back in the 1930s and it continues on today. People hiking to the pools would see a woman in a white dress standing by the water. As they approach, she remains motionless. Only once they're close will she simply vanish into the night. Why she keeps showing up is unknown. Who she is supposed to be or have been is also not known. Over 12 people, once again, they don't know for sure how many, over 12 people have died in and around the pools, usually by falling from the cliff just above. Nothing to see here except all these folks fell from the same area, a very short section of the trail. 1959, a couple were hiking the upper trail. They both spotted a woman standing by the water in a white dress. The female hiker thought she recognized the woman below and she leaned out just a bit to get a better view. That was the last thing she did. 1974, a ranger reported uh, a translucent, a ranger report told of a translucent figure standing by the pool's edge. The image was only visible for a few seconds. A tourist caught the woman in a photo near the water. The image is not that good, but you can definitely make out the shape of a female, and it is definitely white. In 2012, a hiker took a photo from the top of the trail just seconds before falling to his death. His cell phone survived, and an image of a woman can be seen in the last frame. The Paiute tell of the spirit that inhabits the pools, a very good looking young female water spirit who was known for enticing strangers with a come hither look. Come hither is an old fashioned informal adjective that describes a way of looking at somebody that shows a sexual interest in them. Well, this spirit is bound to the area around the cliffs where she has done her deeds. She is cursed to stay in this one location. Her tears are said to be filling the pools, and once she has captured enough souls, she'll become a human. So, what do you think? You want to go hiking the Angel's Trail? Not me. How about just hiking one of the trails? I think my days of long, death defying hikes is well behind me, but maybe a short 1 day hike, maybe. Just as long as I know that I will come back at the end of the day. If you enjoyed tonight's show, spread it around. Tell people they should be listening to Strange Things. If they leave their computer unattended at work, bring it up on their YouTube channel or whatever you can get. I'm on every platform known to man. Start it playing for them. When they get back, they might thank you. Until next time, this is Chris James for Strange Things.
rang up a man, who they say he murdered 3. Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.